And with that, I think since it's just before, we will go ahead and get started. Call the meeting to order. Can we please do a roll call?
Committee Member Hunter,
Present.
Committee Member Palmer,
Here.
Vice Chair Osavar,
Here.
and Committee Member Sanders. Committee Member Turgeon and Chair Pauly are absent. We have staff today, Principal Planner Roveri, Senior Associate Planner Buggert, and myself, Recording Secretary Argenbright. Information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or telephone, is on this meeting's agenda, which is online at monterey.gov/agendas. Remote commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak, and a timer will be shown on the screen. If you are connected on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. In the chamber, we recommend keeping phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference with the meeting. Thank you for participating in your city government.
Thank you, Spencer. And with that, I'd like to open the consent agenda. Any members of the public or anyone have any comments about the consent item?
I see no hands raised online, but I will remind the public that if you are joining by telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. And there are still no attendees online with their hands raised.
Motions?
Yep, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries. I'd like to open public comments for any items not on the agenda.
There are no attendees online with their hands raised.
And I see no hands raised here in the room as well. Okay, then I believe it is time. First public item, Matthew.
I will share my screen. Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Buggert, and I'm a Senior Associate Planner with the City of Monterey's Planning Division. Today we're here to talk about 20 Spray Avenue for their architectural review permit for a new single-family dwelling at today's Architectural Review Committee meeting. The recommendation from city staff is that the ARC approve the resolution approving the architectural review permit with conditions of approval. The subject property is in the northeastern part of the city in the Del Monte Beach neighborhood area on Spray Avenue. It is a currently undeveloped parcel on a street that has its own plan, which I will go over in the next few slides. The proposed single-family residence would be a main floor with a basement down below. The front elevation, this shows the primary main floor, and there would be somewhat significant excavation down below for the subfloor area, similar to nearby properties in Del Monte Beach. The proposed front elevation has a front deck area here, the primary entrance here with a pathway going to the front. There would be a driveway going down to a two-car garage down here on the left, and the building would go up the slope to the rear as depicted here. There would be a combination of stucco and wood paneling, and the rise of the roof would go up with the rise of the slope to the back, where there would be a small portion that would project above the grade. So this back area would wind up being a retaining wall, and then further forward it would step down to the garage area. Here's the east elevation. Here are some of the windows that go above the retaining walls, and there is a stepped series of retaining walls that go down along with the slope. The floor plan of the interior, the garage door is here on the right. So you'd come down, and the Del Monte neighborhood plan allows for a storage area down below and a stairway going up to the primary dwelling. The crawl space in the back needs to be lower than 3 feet above grade. So this is not habitable area. This is just crawl space beneath the upper floor, which is depicted here. The staircase comes up from the garage on the left, or in the middle, and the living area is on the right, the covered porch in the upper right, and then a series of bedrooms and master and bathrooms included in the floor plan. Here's a mock-up rendering of the earth tone color variety. The colors come through a little bit different on the projector, but here you can see the stepped retaining wall going up into the slope. There are a series of findings required for approval from the Architecture Review Committee, including that the proposed siding, form, mass, and architectural style are appropriate. The project as proposed meets all of the development standards. There's an asterisk because we have a clarifying condition that we included. But each of these defer to the Del Monte Beach, Del Monte Shores neighborhood development standards. And this area in particular is subject to a few height and setback restraints that were codified a little over 20 years ago. The views, privacy, and living environment must be found to not be significantly impaired. One comment was received prior to the last meeting with concerns about the story pole height. The applicant had a surveyor go out, and the poles were indeed incorrect. The poles were revised, they were brought to the correct level, and a stamped survey was provided to the city confirming that the story poles are indeed the correct height now. We have not received a follow-up concern about the story pole height. And however, we have received one other comment letter with some view impacts, which I'll go over in a couple slides. I mentioned that there was a map for this area. On the right, you can see that there is a maximum vertical building envelope that is allowed for the property. So lot 11 here is allowed to go up to 71 feet in elevation. And the setbacks here, unless otherwise depicted, the side and rear setbacks are locked in at 5 feet, and the front setback is a required 20 feet. The project as proposed fits each of these setbacks and hits the height limit. Additional findings that are required for approval: the project must be found consistent with city plans and design guidelines. This project is wholly consistent with the general plan and development standards for the area, with a slight adjustment. And the ARC must find the exterior finish, colors, materials, and all exterior features appropriate for the area, and staff found that it was compatible. There are a few special conditions of approval that are required on this project. The first one refers to the minor detail that I was referring to. The development standards say that non-habitable storage areas are allowed as long as they are less than 1 foot above finished grade. The plans show that it is at 1 foot. So on the revised plans, they'll need to show 11 inches and 15/16 or some similar reduction beneath 1, but it does meet the intent of the height that's allowed below grade. It doesn't impact the exterior of the structure. There are also conditions that were identified in the EIR that was prepared for this area for the Del Monte Beach neighborhood, and it included a mitigation monitoring and reporting program that had a series of grading requirements, having any grading plans being reviewed by the Public Works individuals, staff, having a grading monitor on site. There are a number of requirements that are included as special conditions here. And then finally, a survey will again be required to confirm that the height is indeed beneath that 71-foot envelope. This neighbor is this neighborhood is very particular about that. The project would otherwise comply with the standard conditions of approval that are placed on other projects. We received one public comment letter following that initial one about the story poles with concerns about the setback and slope, that 5 feet was rather close to their property line, and there was a request that that maybe the front setback be reduced so that it could be moved further away from their property. As I mentioned before, the map is very clear about the setbacks, and going for a setback variation is not possible. It would be extremely complicated to go back through the EIR process for that. Vibration and structural damage, concerns about that, and excavation and shoring plan being required. As I mentioned before, there are a series of special conditions, 2 through 15, placed on this project for those items. And finally, there was a concern that there may be a fence installed in the future on the rear property line that could impact their view. As proposed under this project, there is no fence proposed along the rear, and any future fences would be subject to that Del Monte development standard document, specifically section 8B regarding fences, guardrails, and retaining walls and residential fences. So if something came up in the future, there was a complaint, we would send code enforcement to ensure that they were going through the right process. With that, staff's recommendation is that ARC adopt the resolution approving the architectural review permit and conditions of approval. That concludes staff's presentation. I believe that the applicant is online. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you, Matthew. Matthew, any questions?
So the water for this site is allowed to be there. It is, and Fernando may be able to talk a little bit more about the history of this area, but water is allowed at this site.
Yeah, there was a development agreement approved by the city council that gives water to this property. And it's been renewed because this is, again, this EIR is from 1998. So it's been renewed and kept alive. If there currently isn't, there is one allowed to be placed there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Is the applicant online and interested in making a presentation? Okay, all right. Sure, come on up.
Is that accurate? 3 minutes? Okay, I wasn't sure. Every committee's got their own rules. Sometimes you get 15 for applicant. So I don't have a lot to tell you other than we spent a significant amount of time back and forth with the architect, making sure that what you see here is exactly what is permissible in the development, meets all the standards. I wasn't aware until right now the 1 foot thing, so we have to technically be just under that. That's fine. That shouldn't create any hardship there. But overall, just real happy with the design and looking forward to getting that building placed. And I will go ahead if I can and reserve the remainder of my time if there's any other comments.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll open to public comments. Anyone in the audience or online that would like to make a comment, please come forward.
I see no hands raised, but I will remind the public, if you are joining by telephone, you can dial *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute. And if you're on Zoom, you can use the raise your hand function. And there are still no hands raised online.
Thank you. Seeing none in the audience, I will now close public comment. And ready for ARC comments.
I'll just say I like overall the design, the appearance of this. I haven't read all of the reports of requirements during construction, the concerns that were raised about vibration, sand movement of soil as they're putting in retaining walls. Can you just, I just would like to make sure that that's monitored throughout this process, that's done, that it isn't causing an issue for the neighbor that is upgrade from this project.
I agree. That sounded like a valid concern. I think Matthew covered that in one of the conditions that have that monitoring. I hope, since we're not seeing another comment from the public, that they agree. Yeah, all those things do matter, and hopefully they have a good plan for it, sheeting and shoring, all that stuff. And with that monitoring and with all the other concerns, it sounds like the staff has really addressed all of those as much as they can. I mean, it's pretty significant, it seems to me, that this building is so low profile in the landscape. So I commend the team for that and doing their best to stay within all these limits. Didn't sound like much of anything was really a stretch.
So would you like to hear more about the grading and erosion mitigation measures, or?
Would you?
No, I just want to make sure that goes on. I haven't read the final resolution. So that the conditions or the requirements in there for monitoring of the grading and construction. Is in place.
Yeah, I'm interested, but we do have a few other items on the list here. And we didn't see any further public comment on it. So I'm hoping, it sounds like that's very well covered. Is it very brief? Would you like to?
There's two that directly relate to that. I mentioned that there was numbers 2 through 15 that have to do with construction and special conditions. The two in particular, prior to issuance of the grading permit, the applicant shall include the grading recommendations for design and construction contained in Appendix C of the Del Monte Beach Re-Subdivision Environmental Impact Report. And then going to number 3, prior to issuance of grading permit, the applicant shall design and implement a temporary erosion control plan during construction activities, subject to the review and approval of the Public Works Department. And there's a number more of runoff collection systems, direct surface drainage away.
What is the process if a neighbor has a concern? Would they just contact you?
They can contact us, also the Public Works Department as well.
And maybe that monitoring, they'd go to those neighbors and say, hey, we're getting ready to go ahead with this, or I don't know. It seems like it's a nice thing to do, but maybe not part of the process. But it sounds like these are pretty well covered.
Yeah, if there are any concerns during construction or prior to construction, the applicant may contact the building division, because they will be doing the inspections out there. There will be a pre-construction meeting. That's one of the stipulations in that Appendix C that is referenced in the conditions of approval. And the Appendix C also requires that a geotechnical engineer be present during excavation. And there's a bunch of other things.
Like a lot. Yeah.
It's a report prepared by a geotechnical and soils firm that concluded that adherence to these conditions of approval would make any impacts regarding geotechnical or soil erosion and vibration would make those impacts less than significant, as long as the conditions are followed.
Great. Well, thank you. Okay.
I move to approve the application for 20 Spray Avenue with conditions of approval.
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
And that is appealable to the Planning Commission with forms available online and in the planning office within 10 days.
Um, on to the next one. Is that you as well? All right. Thank you.
I will share my screen. A somewhat similar project is also at 22 Spray Avenue for a new single-family dwelling and their architecture review permit at today's ARC meeting. The recommendation from city staff is that ARC adopt the resolution approving the architecture review permit with conditions of approval. The subject property is next door at 22 Spray Avenue and also in the identical area, Del Monte Beach neighborhood. The proposed single-family residence, this is a rendering instead of the previous design, which had a pointed roof. This one would have a flat sloping roof and would also include a viewing, a balcony in the front. The existing front elevation is here with the story poles. And the garage would come out to the front left of the property. Here is what the project would look like. As mentioned before, there would be a downslope driveway from the left to the garage door on the right. There's a spiral staircase going up to a rooftop deck, and these would each be glass here and the slanted roof. The project would similarly go up the site, and you can see the basement slab down below with the garage, and there is a tiered retaining wall system going up towards the rear of the structure, where it would slant from left to upper right. The proposed east elevation is here. The front door is located on the side of the house for this one with a walkway to the front. And again, you can see a combination of stucco and wood siding with slightly different color scheme, but still similar neutrals and grays. The lower floor plan, here we have the garage, this time on the right of the structure, and the storage area over here. There's also a stairway that goes up. And I will note the same condition that was on the other one, where it needed to be less than 1 foot, is also included for this project for that storage area. Oh, and the crawl space is the same as well on the left. The great room would be at the front next to the windows that were indicated. The kitchen would go out to the balcony area, to the deck with the spiral staircase up to that rooftop deck above the kitchen. And there would be a number of bedrooms and a master bath and a master bedroom. Here's an alternative angle, and here you can also see the retaining walls going up the slope. Findings required for approval are that the siding form, mass, and architectural style are appropriate. All features of this proposal were also found to be consistent, adhering to that maximum height requirement for the Del Monte Shores area. Views, privacy, and living environment should not be impaired. The previous comment that was noted about the story pole concern was directed at this property as well. And since the revision of story poles, we have not received a comment in writing about concerns about the height. Otherwise, it does adhere to the envelope from the final map. Unlike the other site, this one drops down a little bit with the topography to a maximum height of 69 feet. The setbacks on the rear are 5 feet from both of these sides. However, it is otherwise indicated as 10 feet from this side on the top side, on the east side of the property. And the plans do adhere to that. And there's a 20-foot setback in the front. The project must be found consistent with city plans and design guidelines. It is wholly consistent with the development standards from that neighborhood plan, except for the special condition. The exterior finish, materials, other exterior features must be found appropriate, and staff found they were compatible. There is a special condition about the 1 foot above finished grade, and the plans show 1 foot, so revision is required to ensure that it's less. There was one other note that was included that in the plans, it did mark that there would be a maximum 7-foot high ceiling for the storage area and maximum 8-foot high for the garage. Staff would like it depicted on the elevations as well. It was included on the plans, nothing was wrong, just wanted it to be cohesive throughout the document. And similar to the other project, those conditions from the Del Monte Beach EIR MMRP for grading and construction are included here as well, in addition to the survey required for the height confirmation for the 69-foot height limit. Otherwise, the city standard of conditions also apply to this project. The previous public comment that was noted was also directed at this project, and the same responses are included for here as well for setback, slope concerns, construction related items and excavation, and fence heights. There is no proposed rear fence for this one. Anything that comes up in the future would need to adhere to the Del Monte development standards. With that, staff's recommendation is that ARC adopt the resolution approving the architectural review permit with conditions of approval. This concludes staff's presentation, and the applicant is here.
Thank you, Matthew. Matthew, any questions? Okay. Would you like to do another quick presentation? All right. Please, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and.
Sure. Robert Delina. And with regards to this one, effectively the same comments, a lot of forethought and work with both the planning staff, who were great, and the architect, into making sure that we fit within the requirements for this area, and that we were using sort of a diversity of colors and textures that were conducive with the neighborhood. And other than that, just looking forward to it, and I will reserve the balance of my time in case there's any other comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you very much. Similarly, open public comments on this one. See no hands raised in the audience.
There are no hands raised online, but I will remind the public one more time, if you are joining by telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. There are still no hands raised online.
Thank you. And with that, I'll close public comments. Comments here. Okay. Any motions?
I move that we approve the architectural review application ARP-24-0022 for 22 Spray Avenue for preliminary final architectural review with the appropriate conditions outlined by staff.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
That passes, and that is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 days, with forms available online and in the planning office.
Thank you. All right, and I think with that, we move on to item number 5. 805 Fillmore Street.
I will share my screen. Good afternoon. Here we are to talk about 805 Fillmore Street for an architectural review permit for a first-story addition beneath a proposed accessory dwelling unit at this Architectural Review Committee meeting on April 16th. The recommendation from city staff is that the ARC adopt the resolution approving the architectural review permit and conditions of approval for a first-story addition beneath an ADU. The first-story addition beneath the ADU, the reason that it is worded this way is because as the full application that was provided to the planning department includes a project that I'm going to describe that only the first story portion is subject to architectural review. An attached ADU that goes up to the height limit of the zone district in which it is located, which in this case is a 25-foot maximum. The ADU is exempt from architectural review. Additionally, as long as it has the same roof slope as the primary dwelling, in which case that is included in this project as well. The first story addition, well, the project was noticed at the administrative level because first story additions that comply with all development standards can be done at the administrative level for architectural review permits. And so notices were sent out to the neighboring properties, and any of those types of noticings, if there is a neighbor or a public comment who requests architectural review of a project, that project can be brought before ARC. So that's the reason that it is before you today. Started as admin level and it's been requested to be reviewed by ARC. The subject property is in the western portion of the city in New Monterey. The zoning here is R3. There is a detached garage in the backyard and the primary dwelling in the remainder of the property. And there is a tree that is also included in this application for removal. Here is another aerial of the site. As part of the project, the garage would be demolished and the rear portion of the structure would be demolished and the tree would be removed for the replaced for the project. The project includes, in place of that rear portion of the structure, a owner's suite and an entryway and a laundry going to a newly constructed garage. And then on the rear of the structure, there would be a staircase that leads up to the accessory dwelling unit upstairs. On top, directly on top of the owner's suite, entryway, laundry, and garage is the ADU to be proposed. You can see the stairway here. There's a window proposed in the back, living area, kitchen, ADU, and a covered deck in the front. Facing Fillmore, so the front of the primary dwelling, it would go from the current one story on the left to a new structure on the right. The ceiling would be raised using a truss system for a roof skylight, and you can see the slightly higher roof in the back. From the east elevation from Irving, you can see some alterations to the doorways and windows. For instance, they are swapped between the two here. On the far left, you can see the independent door to the ADU and a new window that's installed for the master bedroom here. The rear of the structure would be changed from this somewhat L-shaped primary dwelling to, you can see the new covered garage access on the left, and then a small window on the first story on the right. And there's the proposed windows above the staircase for the ADU. And then finally, the west elevation, some alterations here where there was a door in the back leading out to the backyard, which would now have that garage with 2 windows installed as well. Findings required for approval are that the proposed siding form, mass, and architectural style are appropriate. As I didn't indicate before, the paneling would be refreshed and extended along the entire width of the structure. It does meet all of the setbacks for a first story addition to a home, and maintaining the covered parking is also required. The massing and scale is compatible with the single family neighborhood and also multifamily for residential neighborhood. Views, privacy, and living environment should be generally found to not be significantly impaired. We have received 3 public comments on this project. One regarding a desire for ARC review, which is why it's before you today. And then 2 that are regarding the second story addition that associated with the ADU. The project must be found consistent with city plans and design guidelines. Staff did not find any inconsistency with the general plan or development standards. The exterior finish, colors, materials, and all other exterior features must be found to be appropriate. Staff found them compatible with the new Monterey neighborhood. And finally, for the tree removal in situations where even healthy trees prevent reasonable development of a permitted use, the tree may be removed. The project includes a permitted use, the habitable area, and attached garage, which are considered reasonable development, and maintaining the tree would prevent reasonable development of the site. The removal was signed off, well, not signed off because it needs an architectural review permit, but reviewed as well by the city forester, and we have included a recommended condition of approval for the tree, which is 1-to-1 replacement. As noted here, conditions of approval, special. City forester recommended tree removal replacement of 1-to-1, and the replaced tree would require coordination with the city forester. The project would otherwise be required to comply with conditions of approval as contained in the resolution. With that concludes staff's presentation. The recommendation is that ARC adopt the resolution approving the project.
Thank you, Matthew. Questions? I have a few. I guess so. This seems a little complicated, hence the kind of naming you used of ADU and first floor edition and things like that. I think that makes it a little challenging for us to navigate what we're supposed to be reviewing and not, as well as the requested review, all of these sorts of things. So I think you tried to do that a little bit, but for me at least, I would appreciate a little more assistance in navigating what we're supposed to be reviewing and not.
The portion of this project that is subject to architectural review, which includes either staff, architectural review committee, are those that are not associated with the ADU. So it is the first story improvements. It's the raised roof for the ceiling skylights at the front of the structure. It is the extension of the siding to the first story components.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
So the view impacts, for instance, those are not, for us to comment on? Or are they because it's the first story addition that caused them via ripple effect?
So in practicality, the second story ADU would not exist without the first story being located there. We would need to demonstrate that the siding was not appropriate for that first story addition, to not include a second story there.
So to follow up on that, the first story is what you're reviewing today. You cannot review the second story because it's an ADU exempt by state law. And the first story, you can review it for view impacts, view privacy and living environment impacts. You need to make those 4 findings just for the first story addition and tree removal. Is that clear?
And basically ignore the red box that you did
Well,
after.
that's the question. When you look at the pictures where the story poles are looking at what the first floor addition is, or do the story poles include the ADU?
The story poles include the ADU, which was not required.
So doing the
Good.
story poles was not required.
Doing the
Right.
story poles
Or-
to that height was not required because there is the slight height adjustment to the structure otherwise.
Okay.
Then just a question has with regard to that, then has staff or someone made an effort to determine what absent the ADU, which we don't have any authority over, what would have been the view impacts based on the first floor addition? Is there a way, was that determined or evaluated in any way by staff?
Yeah, staff made findings on the agenda report and resolution regarding view impacts for the first story addition,
Yeah.
and there were no view impacts identified.
I can pull up the exact wording, but I think we did try and
Okay.
acknowledge the first story specifically.
Well, maybe there could be some clarity about what the neighbors and that process, if are they raising objections, and what are they, and what are we allowed to raise conditions with?
Sure. So the request that was received for the project to be reviewed by the Architecture Review Committee, that written request did not point out specifically the items that needed to be addressed. It was very straightforward. And separately, we have received other public comments also from the same neighbor about view impacts.
Yeah, and you did not, because they were general comments, you did not attempt to filter out for us portions of the comments that were relevant to our conversation. We want to not feel like we're ignoring these comments if they're relevant to the portions that we're supposed to be reviewing. But if the comments are related only specifically to the portions that we're not supposed to be reviewing, then that I'm sure that would feel like we're ignoring those comments. But if we're required to ignore them, that would be nice to help us parse that out a little bit.
Yes. So the interesting thing about this project is, since it is a whole, the project plans that we received include both a first story addition and that ADU. And so any comments on the project, that, like, when you look at the code, the ARP-24/5, the project number, we received a comment on the project plans.
Right.
So they are included as part of the record for the project.
Matthew, would you like to pull up the public comments? Just to show the committee that there aren't any specific comments made to the first story regarding the first story addition.
I can pull that up.
Okay.
And this is sort of a general question. Does this applicant, did they seem to have found a clever workaround? I'm with this ADU piece, or is that just understood that that's
I think that's a question better
Anyone-
directed to the applicant.
But so
because it's code related, and these ripple effects and stuff seems like it makes it, at least for me, it's making it a little challenging to perceive the parts that we're supposed to review, but it seems fairly straightforward as you all are describing. They could have submitted with just the building and then submitted something else later with the ADU, which wouldn't have come across us at all because it would have been a separate application.
That is correct.
Correct. So that could have happened, but right now, because they were done together, it's a little muddled, and it's actually created some of this challenge in some ways by submitting together.
yeah, so the state law, which is also reflected in our ADU ordinance, it allows the construction of an ADU along with an existing or proposed single-family dwelling. And so this is a proposed first-story addition and an ADU, so it's allowed. If it was the other way, if the first-story addition was already existing, they can still apply for an ADU on top of it. It doesn't matter which way they do it, it's allowed by state law.
Thank you. That helps. Okay. Any other questions? No. All right, then I believe we move on to the applicant, if the applicant would like to make a presentation.
I do see the applicant online. Hand's not raised, but I will allow you to talk. You should be able to unmute yourself. You should be able to unmute yourself on Zoom.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, is Ski there, Mr. Tennyson?
Yes,
Did you want to present it, Ski, or what would you like to do?
they accepted. Yes, they are presenting with backup.
Yeah, he calls me Ski. That's my nickname. My name is Emil Tennyson. I'm here with my wife, Margarita Tennyson, and we're owners of the property. To answer the question, so I looked before I came in to see how long we've been working on this project, and it's March 2023. So we have done everything that we can to take everything into consideration with the neighbors and that. There's just, we've had different plans. I can't tell you how many different plans that we've had, but there's different situations, not just with the view, but with foundation of the existing house. We can't really build over it because the existing foundation won't allow us. We have to start, that's why the back end is coming off. We have to start from scratch, and it just be cost prohibitive to really make it any better for a view for the neighbors. And that's initially what they're concerned with. Everybody around us has two-story homes but us. The house behind us, that's going to have their view blocked. We met with them this weekend. We had a good conversation. I want to say that unfortunately for them, they just purchased that home a little bit ago. Before that, that house was always pretty much a rental. So we didn't really have any concerns, especially when we were doing the planning and stuff like that, because in the past, there's been a lot of DLI people there renting. So it really, even if it did have an impact on them, it wasn't their structure. And unfortunately, just before the story poles went up, they purchased the house. And if they would have came to us beforehand, before they purchased this, we surely would have told them that we were working on the house. As far as the rules changing and us trying to figure out a way to get around any rules. There certainly wasn't any of that. And as a matter of fact, we didn't even really know that that rule existed until I sent an email to Matthew to clearly ask, because I kept seeing things, how it would affect us. And I sent an email to clearly ask him what was the deal. And this was like in December. So, you know, he told me exactly what it was. So that was really the point where we found out that it wasn't really subject to architectural review. So anyway, that's all I have to say. We've tried to do our best to make it meet all the considerations that need to be made. And we're hoping that you approve it. Thank you.
Can I add one thing, please?
Yes.
Yes.
This is Mark Lee, the architect on the job. One of the things that we did when we did the design and working with Matthew on it, because we did several iterations, we ended up doing all the standards that met all the standards that were required for a two-story facility or two-story addition, because that's what we were thinking we were doing. We weren't even considering the ADU at the time. So all the setbacks, the additional side yard setbacks, the building height, percentage coverages, everything was considered as a two-story. So we really met all the conditions that would have been done if it were not an ADU. So we're not trying to skirt any issues on it being an ADU and trying to get around the thing. It still would have met all the conditions even had it been a two-story design. So I just want to say that we're not trying to cheat the system here.
Thank you, Mark. Any questions for the applicants? Okay.
Accessory dwelling, is it intended to be rented to somebody outside of your household? Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay.
Actually, sorry,
Go ahead.
follow up on that.
Yep.
As you make sure your mic is on there. Thank you.
So rented to someone outside of your household, rented? Okay. Will that rental be open to the general public? Do you plan to have any limit to what you'd rent it for?
No, as much as we can get, we take the project.
Understood.
Thank you. Any more?
Can you, sorry, can you repeat those answers into the mic, please?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, the questions were, do you intend to rent it to the general public, and is there a cap to which you would, a cap on the rent that you would issue?
There is no cap. Yes, we would rent it to whoever would pay the market value at the time.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I will now open for public comment. I see a number of people in the audience. If you would like to come up, please do so. And Spencer, if there's anyone in the online version, please let us know.
Vice Chair Ostovar, are you setting a time limit to the public comments?
Yes, these will have time limits. I believe tradition is 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the Architectural Review Committee. My name is Lena Bunson. I recently retired after 34 years as a dedicated educator. After selling homes in Campbell and Pacific Grove, our hard work paid off, and my husband Dave and I found our forever home in Monterey at 1490 Irving Ave. We chose this home not only because we love the community, but because it offered something truly special, a beautiful, peaceful view of the bay that brings us a sense of calm and joy every single day, a true dream come true. That view, however, is in jeopardy due to the proposed ADU at 805 Fillmore Street, which sits directly in front of our home. As currently designed, the structure would block our entire bay view and drastically reduce the natural light that fills our home. In addition to the loss of the light in the view, I am also deeply concerned about the privacy. The current windows placement in the ADU looks directly into our bedroom, making us feel extremely uncomfortable. I want to be clear, I fully understand that the proposed project meets the zoning and state code requirements. My ask is not to stop the project, but to work together in the spirit of collaboration to find a compromise that benefits both parties. I'm respectfully requesting that the committee consider the following: adjusting the orientation of the ADU to preserve at least part of our bay view, or relocating or resizing or beveling the window that faces directly into our room to address privacy concerns, including the one on the first floor. I believe strongly that a good design considers not just what's on paper, but real life impacts on neighbors and the community. I'm here simply asking for a thoughtful resolution, one that works for everyone involved. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dave Bunson. My wife and I recently purchased a home at 1490 Irving Avenue on October 28th, 2024. We're really excited to be part of this community and appreciate the opportunity to be able to present today. In regards to the proposed plans at 805 Fillmore, I have a question and I have a couple of concerns. The question is, there is a future bathroom in the current plans noted to be included within this home. We'd like to get clarification on how the water is going to be routed and planned for this bathroom. Specifically, how does this compare to the neighboring properties? And is there any special infrastructure required, or is it already in place? Second, our bay view. As my wife stated, we are very concerned about the proposed ADU, and it will completely block our view. We'd like to request an adjustment to the design that would help preserve at least part of the view. We've been able to create some slides, which I have here, that can basically be a possible compromise to be able to make it work for both parties. One of the other points I'd like to bring up is our resale value. Losing the bay view would significantly reduce our home and our neighbors, which are right behind me, value of their homes. As stated earlier, we just purchased the property in October of 2024. This ADU would directly affect our investment. We are fully committed to working within the guidelines of the committee and welcome any direction or feedback that you can offer. We're eager to move forward with the project that will be beneficial for both parties and our family and the community. Thank you again for your consideration. I do have copies if you guys would like to see this. I actually did make it proposed.
Yeah, is that, should we distribute them?
Yes, are we able to show it on the screen just for
That would
everyone,
be helpful.
everyone's benefit?
Thank you. I suppose this is kind of eating into presentation time in a sense. So we should probably show these quickly and move on. Thank you for that. And thank you for your comments. Any more public comments?
There are no hands raised online.
Okay, with that, I will close public comments and open it up to committee comments.
So again, we're going back to what we are allowed to review and make comments on. For example, Windows, I know these privacy concerns seem reasonable. Is that even something that we can deliberate on or make conditions for, since it's an ADU?
The way this project is designed, any features associated with the ADU itself cannot be commented on. There are anything on essentially the first floor associated with the primary dwelling can be commented on.
Yeah, I guess in that case, I would say the only comment that's tangentially related would be perhaps that staff could help us and the public avoid some of this confusion, in a sense, would be to assist applicants in maybe separating those out in the future, perhaps as a way to get around that. But as I think they stated, that was kind of all ongoing for years before these things happened. But it also doesn't seem unreasonable for those concerns to be addressed to staff anyway, without our comment. And hopefully, even with things like this, they can be addressed. But I do believe it seems like these are all concerns that are out of our hands.
So one item of note associated with the handout that was provided, if the architectural review committee decides to approve the project today, but the applicant wishes to revise the design of the accessory dwelling unit, they can do adjustments to the accessory dwelling unit without coming back to architectural review because it's not subject to your review. If those changes require alterations to the primary dwelling, those portions would be coming back, and it would be up to you as to whether you want to see this project again. If there are revisions, I'm not even saying there will be or anything, just for your awareness.
Yeah.
So any pieces that are adjusted on the primary dwelling would come back through the standard architectural review process, either with a permit amendment or similar process. But if it's just the ADU, they can do that independently.
Thank you. I'm at least glad that we've had this forum for the neighbors to speak their concerns directly, and it sounds like they are in communication with the neighbor. Hopefully that continues, and they're able to find some peace with those changes, or if those changes occur. But hopefully those communications continue with their neighbors. We know how important that is. It seems that unless there's further comments on the primary unit itself, that we're at a point of making a motion.
Is it permissible to comment at all on I mean, there's conversation with staff about the fact that the rest of the project is exempt. Can we comment on the exemption of the rest, the larger project, or are comments only germane to the first story changes?
As designed, the only portions that are subject to architectural review are the first story.
Okay. I suppose I just want, I think all I can add is because this first story addition is essential, it sounds like, to the second story. It appears that the comments addressed to the committee recently by the neighbors. Exemptions for ADUs exist for a reason. And I'll just comment on that generally due to the housing crisis in this state. And if the ARC has been put in a position to approve or deny the first story changes that would prevent that, the whole point of exemptions from discretionary review are to allow communities to move forward. It's regrettable, I suppose, that things went as they did. But as reviewed for the first story, they seem to be in alignment with all required conditions. So it's the whole point.
And with that,
I'll move to approve the 805 Fillmore Street architectural review permit ARP 240023 with tree permit condition.
okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Again, we feel for those things, but we are constrained in this way, and we hope that you are able to continue to have conversations and find some peace with what's with the changes.
That motion passes and is appealable to the planning commission with forms available online and in the planning office within 10 days.
Thank you, Spencer. Thank everyone for your participation. Really appreciate it. Any other general closing thoughts from staff?
None other than what's in your agenda packet. And this is a good example of what an administrative architectural review permit could be. This, like Matthew stated, this was a first story addition that is allowed to be approved by staff, but it was referred to you all for a decision at today's meeting. And so staff is busy approving administrative architectural review permits that you're not aware of because you don't have to see. We approve them at the staff level. And this one for 805 Fillmore did require noticing neighbors. And that's why it was referred to you all.
Thank you. Okay. With that, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.